All right. I think we'll get started here in just a minute.
All right.
All right. Welcome, everybody, to the Final Fantasy ranking stream. As always, I am your host, Chrono, back after being gone for a long time. Long time. But basically, I'm going to give you the quick gist of it, right? So, I've always been a kind of a big fan of the Final Fantasy series from afar, right? And I always admired it greatly. One of the first games I played was Dissidia, and Dissidia is kind of a good one to start with because like it introduces you to so many of the worlds simultaneously, and it kind of like made me. After playing Dissidia, I was kind of like, I really want to discover this whole series. I want to play them all, and that was like more than 12 years ago, I think. So it's taken a long time to get to it. But over time, I've slowly been playing more and more of the numbered entries. And I have just about completed all of the mainline numbered ones. Now, I say that because I need to really quickly establish that unfortunately, I don't feel qualified to rank one game in the numbered entries, and that is Final Fantasy XI, because it's kind of the tougher MMO to really get going. It's kind of a tough game in general. I don't really have many people to play it with. I played a little bit of it, but I don't know if I have played enough of it to really think much about it. I mean, it's an MMO, so it's different than the other ones, but I will be ranking 14, so it's tough. You can say I'm cheating. That's fine. I totally understand. But just so you know right now, Final Fantasy XI will remain in the have not played section, which is at the very bottom. This is not accurate, but I just put them there as placeholders. Also, will not be counting the sequels to mainline numbered entries. I might give you kind of an idea of where they would rank. Maybe we'll do it at the end for fun, but don't consider it kind of like part of counting on the list itself, if that makes sense. These are just the main numbered ones. So X2, the 13 sequels, some of them I haven't even completed. So it's like, yeah, just the mainline numbered ones that most people have played. So that basically the idea is that I've gotten a bite of every different world and protagonists and all that stuff. Makes sense, right? Hopefully. Lastly, I was debating on this for a while on whether or not Final Fantasy VII Remake should be included. And I think it should. Overall, I see really no specific reason why it shouldn't. I mean, it's essentially like just the same. It's just 7 again, right? So like, yeah, I think it should count. We're gonna do it for fun. Maybe at the end I'll throw in some other ones like the side games. I haven't played them all. Oh god. And first and foremost, I need to mention right now, I am no expert on Final Fantasy. I like it a lot. I think it's a beautiful series. I just wanted to have fun with it and play all the ones that I could, because I'm a weird OCD person who loves making lists and loves like comparing things. So yeah, that's what we're here to do today. I'm going to rank the entire mainline numbered series entries from least favorite to favorite. I'm going to do it by tiers, but I do have a specific order. It's going to be a little tricky. I actually might need a little help figuring it out. And please, by all means, everyone chime in. Let me know what you think. And most of all, know that this is just for fun. This is not the definitive list by any stretch of the means. It's not an objective list. This is just me personally. Like maybe what resonated with me more. What have you, basically. Hopefully that all makes sense. Hopefully sound good, everyone. Sound good, Joey?
Sounds absolutely fantastic.
So yeah,
Happy to be here to help out.
The goal is let's just talk about Final Fantasy. Let's have a good time. And yeah, don't worry about like my opinions. Yes, I am kind of a critical person of like writing and games sometimes, but I do it more for fun. Like I am not here to shit on anyone's favorite or anything like that. Maybe one will get a little weird, but thank you, Fishy.
We'll get there.
Yeah. So I think the best way to do it would probably be to just kind of go in order of my rank, not necessarily in order of the series. I think that'd be the most exciting way to do it. Hi Willow. Oh, mwah. I yeah, she'll see that. That'll be enough. So yeah, I'm just gonna probably just go in order of my rank. There'll be some stuff to figure out for sure. But really quickly, the order of the series, I started with FF3 on the DS. That was the very first one I played. Then Dissidia, and the last one I played was 15. Fittingly enough, I'm judging you hard if you rate my favorite game low. Okay, let's just have fun with it, everyone. Relia, thank you so much for the follow. Now, I will go into things like what I had a problem with, what I didn't, what I loved about it, because that's kind of a thing with me. Is I think games are about not necessarily like good and bad necessarily. It's about what did a game do that stood out, that was great about it. You know what I mean? Like, sure, every game's got flaws, but what makes it special? Like, what was really good about that game? That's how I have always seen it. But yeah, we're gonna give it a shot. All right. So I believe that would give us, let's see, it would be normally it would be 16, but we're not doing 11, so I think 15 games, I think, if you count Final Fantasy VII Remake. Yeah, right? Makes sense?
Yeah, it would be 15 because you're also including the 7 remake.
Okay. All right. So I think 6 tiers is good enough. Again, there will be an order, but let's get started. So we're going to start off with my personal least favorite of the bunch. Now, in my opinion, I don't know about how anyone else feels about this, but there is not really any bad Final Fantasy game, except maybe one. There was only one that I played that I came away with kind of just not feeling too hot about, and that would be what I think is the worst in the series. No surprise, probably Final Fantasy II. Which
not a lot of people like Final Fantasy II for sure. I'm one of the weird cases. I enjoyed my first playthrough of Final Fantasy II quite a bit.
I think it's Pumpkin Queen. Thank you so much for the follow. I think it's a case of some really interesting ideas. I like what Final Fantasy II is going for with a lot of things. Like, oh, you level up your skills instead of your actual individual character. Like, interesting in concept, incredibly repetitive in execution.
I hear that the Saga series in particular is kind of like the better version of Final Fantasy II.
Okay. See, I've heard really good things about the Saga series, but I've also heard that they're really tough. And if they're blueprinted off of Final Fantasy II, that makes sense because 2's kind of
exactly.
Oh God, there are only 2 games that I used a guide for. And I wouldn't nowadays, but back then I was much younger and I was more, I'm now kind of against using guides for like anything myself. I don't care if you do, but like 2 I used the guide for. Also another one I used the guide for, but I think my biggest problem with the game was, and I completely forgot about it until I was rethinking about it. What is the name of that system it has where you have to like remember key terms?
Yeah, I think it was just like the keyword system.
I hated it.
I kind of like it.
I think, again, interesting idea and concept, just not executed particularly well. I don't know. Like it has a lot of what makes a Final Fantasy so good with like its aesthetic and its charm. The game has got great music. The aesthetic is pretty. I think Firion is one of the coolest looking characters in the whole entire protagonist in the whole series. I think he's really cool looking. The story is obviously there's not much there, but like, it can't be expected that there would have been that much. This was the NES era, of course. I do, however, think that the idea of of you killed the bad guy who then went to hell, but spoilers, he actually took over hell. Like,
Yeah.
that's kind of cool. That's kind of cool. Like,
Yeah. Final Fantasy 2 came out like a year after the first Final Fantasy.
I
So
actually
there's
didn't
a
know that.
lot of,
They
yeah, it
cranked
was
it
like,
out fast, huh? Okay.
yeah, it was like super quick after the first one.
Okay.
And in the Dawn of Souls version on the Game Boy, it's like there's this side campaign of like
Okay.
all the characters who had died previously banding together to take over the Emperor, who had then taken over heaven.
Oh, that's actually an incredibly cool concept.
Yeah, I was like, wow, okay, they tried to do something with the Game Boy Advanced versions of these games, and it shows a lot.
I played the PSP version, which pretty, very pretty, but
Not sure.
yes,
The PSP
onion
version, I think,
rings.
also had that.
Yes, onion rings. I didn't even think about that, but this was obviously the beginning of like the beginning of the series was kind of like them starting with the job system, which only got better, and we'll get to 5. 5 is going to be hard to rank actually, but overall it's got kind of surface level really good stuff, but it's just such a fundamentally flawed game in my opinion. It's one of the only games that I came away with, only one of the only games ever. I don't dislike many games, but it's one of the only games I came away with where I was like, I didn't like that. I just did not like any of that.
Yeah, it has some good, fun, weird, interesting things, but yeah, overall, probably not the one that you're going to be starting off with unless you really don't like yourself.
Exactly. It's, oh god, yeah. It's a case of cool ideas just not executed particularly well. It's very much like a lot of those beginning series, their sequels immediately try to do different things. You know, Zelda 2, same thing. Like they immediately are like, well, we got to keep it fresh, which is kind of interesting when you think about it. Like back then, like we think of like nowadays, like how like a lot of like games like features and stuff start to like repeat themselves, and we call like developers unoriginal for doing the same thing over and over. It's kind of interesting how like even back then, like with just like second entries, they're like, we already got to reinvent it. We already got to switch it up. It's kind of interesting how that changed, but
Yeah, and how like drastically dynamic the differences are from one to another.
I have never played Bravely Default. I've heard good things though. I've heard good things.
Yeah, so have I.
Oh crap! I was like, can anyone hear it? There's no audio in the background, right? I don't think there is.
I certainly hope not. I don't have the stream up right now.
I knew that the bottom 3 were going to be pretty easy to rank. And once again, like I said, I don't think other than 2 there are any bad Final Fantasy games, but it doesn't get much more just basic and vanilla than the next entry in our list, the original Final Fantasy.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, that is number 2. I guess you could say 15 on our list. You're not hearing it? Okay, cool. Would have been better if it had applied a little differently. Yeah, I think Zelda 2 actually came out a little bit better than Final Fantasy 2 in like how it differentiated itself. Hey, Ensor, I'm doing all right. How are you? We're ranking the Final Fantasy games. Final Fantasy 1, right? So It doesn't get much more. There's not much of a better example of like it's perfectly serviceable. Like, and you can't expect anything less, right? It is the first one. It was their first go. An absolutely miraculous save for Squaresoft. Like, it's a solid little decent RPG. There's not much that stands out about it. But what you can't really have expected that, honestly.
It's just like here's a little bit of something to get you started. Boom.
Yeah.
Open world. You do whatever you want to. I think it's from like the way that I look at things now that I've been getting more into tabletop RPGs like Dungeons and Dragons and stuff like that. It really feels like we're playing like old school Dungeons and Dragons if someone from Japan had designed Dungeons.
Yeah, yeah.
Because you've got your war, your fighter class, your thief, your wizard, your cleric, all that.
Yeah. I think weren't they somewhat inspired by Dungeons and Dragons?
I would
Sakaguchi, wasn't he? Like, I swear.
I wouldn't be surprised at all.
Yeah, yeah. It's
If anyone
so
in comments knows, hit us up. We'll
the story is
we'll
almost non-existent. The game is certainly worth playing. Hi, Rain. I hope I don't. I love. How are you?
But it would make sense if it was inspired.
Thanks, Mal.
Dungeons and Dragons is such a widely prolific game.
Oh yeah, everywhere.
General.
Oh yeah, for sure, for sure.
So that wouldn't be surprising in the slightest. You know, Mind Flayers come to mind as like a classic Dungeons and Dragons monster that you
Thank you, Mika, for the sub.
in Final Fantasy games.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if there's anything about one that even stands out uniquely amongst the rest of the series. Like,
I like the plot twist near the end.
yeah, that's true. That's true. It did do that. That surprised me. Otherwise, the story's almost
really
non-existent,
cool.
but you gotta give it that.
It did a really cool, like, this is all kind of a time loop sort of thing. That's really cool.
Yeah. Oh, I'm excited, Rain. Yeah, no, I mean, this is just for fun. Don't let my opinions. This is not me saying that whatever you think is wrong. Like, I don't even care if you like Final Fantasy 2. I think that's awesome if you like Final Fantasy 2. Mitch, thank you so much for the sub. But nobody's gotten angry yet, so I think we're fine.
Yeah.
But
and the soundtrack is nice for the original Final Fantasy. That also has a
that's
good thing
true.
going for it.
That's true.
Chaos Shrine's great. I'm a big fan of Mount Ghoul, Gimatoya's Cavern. Just to name off a couple.
Yeah. It's got a really overweight lich. I don't know why the lich is so like plump, but I love it. It's got a thick lich. Hashtag thick lich. What?
He's not thick. He's just big boned. It's his cloak.
Well, that makes sense, I guess.
It's just a big cloak.
Yeah. It's there's not much to say about Final Fantasy 1. It's one of the original RPGs and it shows, but it also there's a reason why it made history. There's a reason why it started this glorious franchise. It's good. Is it worth playing as a relic? Sure, I think so. Like,
we got a whole bunch of thick liches in the chat. That is incredible.
I actually think you can make a case that the original, the PSP version of the original would be a good first JRPG for a lot of people. Maybe, like, if you wanted to get into JRPGs.
Yeah, it's fairly. I wouldn't say it's fairly straightforward because it's like you have a little bit at the beginning, then just like, here's the rest of
That's true. Go. Yeah, which it was the only other one I used the guide on. Nowadays, no, I would never. But I was much younger. Oh, wait, all jokes aside, Aurora, do you know the story of why it's called Final Fantasy? I'm sure everyone knows it, right? The same way you do a high school history textbook, do the assignment and move on, pretty much. And you might learn a few things or enjoy yourself a little bit along the way. So like I said, the beginning of this ranking, I said from the get-go was going to be the easiest part. The order has not changed throughout my entire adventure through the series. And as it turns out, while I think 2 is the only bad Final Fantasy, the original 3 are definitely the bottom of the barrel, in my opinion, and only because the series would only get better than that. So, next up on our list is Final Fantasy 3.
And there's something about Final Fantasy 3 that you and I both actually have in common, and it was both of our first Final Fantasy games.
That's right.
In particular, the DS version.
Yeah, the DS version. Yeah, which, not an easy game.
Yeah.
Like, I gotta give my little self credit on this one.
It is a very unforgiving game at times.
Yeah.
And its job system isn't more so you customizing your party as it is to solve puzzles, which is an interesting concept and an interesting way to try to introduce this idea of the job system.
Yeah. Oh, are you talking about the first one, Fishy? Is there any way of playing the original version of FF3? Did they port it other than the DS one?
They reported the DS version onto the PSP.
Yes.
And then onto iOS
and then
Android.
Steam.
Then they reported the iOS version onto Steam.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I did do the Super Boss. And, like, I love the aesthetic of the PSP ones. I really like... I don't know why. Like, I feel like a lot of people would be like, "Oh, I swear by the sprites or the original sprites," but like, I really like what they were going for with the look of the PSP ones. Like, the characters kind of have that more roundedness to them. I'm so stupid.
They're all kind of thick liches.
Thick lich. Hashtag thick lich. Final Fantasy 3. So like, yeah, it's there's also not too much to say about it. I believe, was it the first one with Sid, or was Sid in 2?
Was the first one.
2 was the first one with Sid. Okay, Sid's kind of charming in 3.
3 was the first one that introduced Moogles.
Can't recommend the newer updated versions though. Okay, 3 was the one that introduced Moogles. You're right.
Yeah,
3 is an interesting. 3 is kind of a good one of my first ever JRPGs. It might have been my first turn-based JRPG ever, because like I grew up not a ton of money, and my brother bought all the games, and he had no interest in JRPGs, so I didn't get much experience with them. Kingdom Hearts 1 was probably like my first JRPG, but not like, it's obviously not turn-based. But my friend once left his copy of FF3 on the DS at my house, and he wasn't going to come back for like a week. So I just played it for the hell of it, and I was enthralled. Like, I remember they do the cliche thing in the end of 3 that they do in a lot of them, where the characters kind of they all get defeated, right? And then it cuts to everybody praying for their salvation, and then the characters like rise back up. That was my first time ever seeing that cliche in 3. I thought it was the most amazing thing ever. Oh my god, thank you so much for the follow, Mike. Oh wait, I think, never mind, whatever. We're not gonna say it.
Yeah.
So I thought it was like the most like mind-blowing thing ever. And I remember telling my friend, that was so cool when they were all like praying for their, and he's like, that's in like every RPG. And I'm like, it is? Oh, okay. Can you put the one you like most in front of the one in the, yeah, basically, that's a good idea. Yeah, that's actually a really good idea. I was planning on doing that. I just totally forgot. But like, I don't know if there's too much to say about 3. It's definitely tough. There's this one boss in 3. God, is it like a flying white? It's like a flying bird man or something. Oh my!
You're talking about Garuda.
Yes, Garuda is It was Garuda, wasn't it? Now in retrospect,
Garuda like jump in the air and then slam
yes.
down. Yeah, that's one of the examples of like, here's the job system is designed in such a way that it's meant to solve puzzles, kind of like when you're fighting that weird skeleton man Hane, and he's changing his weaknesses, so you need a scholar to like.
That's true. Yeah.
Elementary 2, things like that. I will say that Final Fantasy 3 has a beautiful soundtrack. I remember booting up the game on the DS for the first time, and watching that opening sequence, and I literally cried. It's just so beautiful. I can't not tear up a little bit whenever I listen to it.
What's the name of it? Wind something?
Yeah, Eternal Wind.
Eternal Wind, yeah, which they brought back in Shadowbringers, right? Denise, thank you so much for the follow.
Yeah, it's a motif in Shadowbringers.
That's right.
It does make an appearance in Lightning Returns Final Fantasy 13. I won't spoil where.
3 also has the Crystal Tower, the introduction of the Crystal Tower, which is one of the worst final dungeons of any game ever made.
Yeah, that dungeon is, and if you're doing the Eureka stuff, which you absolutely should if you're going to run through the Crystal Tower in Final Fantasy 3, it just makes it even longer. There's like no save points.
God, I don't even remember that. Oh, wow.
Yeah, because Eureka has like all the best gear in the game, just hiding in there.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's not the best one, but it's good, and the series would only get better from there. And hey, that's what we want, right?
Exactly. We want steady improvement. And to answer, I think someone put a question about Moogles being featured in a different game other than Final Fantasy. I think they were in Assassin's Creed at one point.
What? Are you serious?
I think they were in Assassin's Creed Origins.
No shit.
For an event of some sort.
That's so true, Stelios. Yeah, the Crystal Tower is, God, it's iconic, but it's also friggin' annoying as shit.
Yeah.
So, now things get interesting.
Hmm.
Because now, uh, let's be honest, 1, 2, and 3, that's pretty easy to guess as like the bottom three for most people, I would imagine.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
now, this is where I'm gonna start like probably breaking a few hearts, maybe, and maybe
Oh no.
even like my own. This is gonna
Oh
hurt.
no.
um.
What takes?
So, and I hate to say this, but the person I'm gonna break the heart of first here, for sure, is you, Joey.
Oh no. FF12.
And I'm so sorry, but I have to go with FF12 next.
Oh no. Oh, that's fine.
Um, FF12 is a great game. Um, I love the setting of the game. I
Mhm.
think that Evilise is in. I love the kind of clash between the more fantasy and the more futuristic. I think it probably maybe nails that combination the best. Maybe the world is very
Oh,
pretty.
it's way too high. Oh, come on now.
What's that?
12, Octavis 12 is good and everyone knows it. Come on.
12 in C tier is way too high. 12 in C. Wow. Okay. Well, I might move these around because this is just kind of like, would I say 12 is a cut above the original three? Yes. So,
Hmm.
what did I love about 12? I loved. I personally love the gambit system.
Yeah.
Somebody kind of mentioned to me that it's like computer programming for babies, and I'm like, that's kind of true. It is, isn't it? That's actually
Yeah.
really
I,
cool. Like
makes perfect sense.
I did learn a little bit of code and programming when I was a kid. So yeah, I love that the Gambit system is its own completely different like game almost. It's strategy.
Yeah.
Like people say 12 plays itself. I'm like 12 only plays itself if you're playing a whole different game called the Gambit system. Like,
Yeah.
and it's fun.
The gambits are kind of designed to be that way if you know how to make it work well.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting.
Yeah.
It tries a lot of weird things that I am completely all about. Yeah, like I said, like the
We'll get
world
to that,
building is
Aurora.
great. I like the uh is it like a steampunk cyberpunky sort of a vibe? That's super cool.
Yeah, I think you could call it that. I mean, so like I actually really enjoyed the combat because to me watching my characters kind of do it all on their own was satisfying because they only did it all on their own because I strategized them well. And I would imagine that the Zodiac job system is the best version of it, though I will say I thought the job system was pretty undercooked overall. The characters don't end up feeling that much different from each other in my opinion
Yeah.
because one of my biggest problems with 12, there's probably
Hmm.
three main ones, but one of my biggest problems,
Okay.
every single boss in that game is the exact same strategy, except maybe one, like the bomb, I think. Every single boss in that game is once you have your gambits equipped, go in, absolutely pummel them and watch your party just pummel them for like the first 75% of their health bar and then throw in a quickening at the end so that you get rid of the rest of their health. That's every single boss in the entire game. At least in my
Yeah.
opinion. They don't employ too much strategy into them. It's not the hardest Final Fantasy. It's not the easiest, but going by rank
Yeah.
specifically, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think some of like the later super bosses and stuff. Like if you try to go for like all the summons and all this and that, then it gets a little bit more complicated because you're dealing with elemental resistances and all this and that and the other thing. And oh, you need like this accessory and that and whatnot.
True.
It, but if you're just playing it like super casually, Final Fantasy 12: The Zodiac Age is a really, really easy game
Yeah.
compared to like the original Final Fantasy 12, where
Oh,
there's a
okay.
there's
Okay.
rebalancing in the original FF12 because
Right,
also
cuz didn't because Quickenings, didn't they cost like something that like made it so much harder to do them in the original?
Quickenings cost like a certain amount of MP.
Mystic Quest best.
Rather than being like its own separate gauge, that was one thing. They didn't have job systems.
That's right. I knew that one. Yeah.
So if everyone could basically be the same character,
Mm-hmm.
and so it's just like pick the 3 you guys you like the most, and then just kit them out with whatever you want.
Mm-hmm. My second of the biggest problems. So, like I said, I love the world, I love the gambits, but I don't like how every boss is the same. But and this is maybe my biggest problem with the game. The world is too big, in my opinion. Like, I get what they were going for. PS2, let's show off and let's make let's give you a sense of scope and scale for Ivalice, like all that. I get it, but like, they're so empty, and the space isn't. John, thank you so much for the follow. The space isn't utilized particularly well, and it is a slog to get through some of those areas. And mind you, everyone, I played the Switch version, which has the fast forward feature. What was it? How did you people even do this without the sand sea? Oh my god, it's so big, and just like I'm just like
we did the whole thing, and we liked it.
I guess some people did. It's not my thing, and hey, that's not necessarily saying it's an inherent flaw. Just I'm not a big fan of like empty space and size just for the shit. I think it achieved the scope and scale, but too much. It didn't need to be that much, in my opinion. Some of those areas are just a slog to get through, in my opinion.
In the defense of Ivalice being just a big world as it is,
hunt missions were fun.
Not the only game where that takes place in Ivalice. There are 2 other games that exist that take place in Ivalice. Vagrant Story and Final Fantasy Tactics.
Okay. Oh, yes. I knew that. Yeah.
So Ivalice was already an established place that had like its own lore and everything behind it. So it kind of makes sense why there's like
I'm trying to think
bit of a bigness to it, and hearing about like Rosario and things like that.
I'm trying to think of 12 used a lot of RNG. I'm trying to think of that. I want to play Vagrant Story. Hunt missions were fun.
Tactics Advance 2 as well. Later on in the Game Boy Advance. Yep, you guys are absolutely right.
My only other major problem with the game, Balthier's back must be hurting, because he's carrying that whole goddamn cast.
Yeah, Balthier is so good. And yeah, the other thing
and everyone else is so not, except Fran's good and Ash is good, but Balthier is the best by far. Like,
could you try to boost me up a little bit?
What's that?
I guess.
Oh yeah, which results in my probably, maybe this is actually my biggest problem. I don't like the story of 12. It's so, nothing happens in it. I'm all about like, let's keep the pacing going, you know? That's just me. I don't like that whole game. To me is MacGuffin after MacGuffin. Let's go find that thing because we need that thing, while plot is happening in the background with the kingdoms or with the empire and stuff. And we're like either just told it's happening, or it's happening but like in an unexciting way. 12's story kind of sucks, in my opinion.
I can agree with that.
It gets good at the end, but like right at the end. And yes, Vaughn sucks. I get what they were going for. Like, he's supposed to be a fish out of water character like Tidus, where you kind of get the story through his eyes. I get it, but he's a hateable piece of shit. we all hate Vaughn.
12 is very much like, hey, if you want to play an MMO, but it's single player, play Final Fantasy 12.
But the better version of that, in my opinion, is just Xenoblade Chronicles. But
yes. Yeah. Xenoblade Chronicles exists.
No, I like 12.
I need to revisit it at some point and actually try to beat it at some point in time.
It hurts me to put 12 this low, but I have to. Now,
oh, that's fine.
I might need some help with this, because I'm not entirely sure which of these two should absolutely come next.
Okay.
I think I think if I really have to, if I really have to pick,
Okay.
I think I gotta go with Final Fantasy 15. Between
Ooh.
another one on my
Okay. All
list.
right. All right.
And
I see you.
so 15 is the last one I played, everyone,
Mhm.
fittingly enough. I think a lot of people really swear. Hi, Panic! I think a lot of people really swear, but I'm Captain Rosh von Rosenberg. Worst thing ever. I think a lot of people swear by 15, and I'll give you my experience. I was actually really, really liking 15. I was loving 15 because I think that personally, when Final Fantasy 15 is just this slow, like almost beautifully mundane road trip with your bros, it's
Yeah.
amazing. I love that the game, unlike every other entry in this series, unlike most games in general, focuses so much on the slow moments. Like, let's emphasize those campfires that all of our characters would be having, like, in between all the action. Let's emphasize the driving and the slow moments of just enjoying each other's company and kind of
And
just
gear.
taking in the world. Oh, Nier does that. Is that what you said?
No, and the Coleman gear.
Okay.
This
I
is all the product
love.
placement in 15.
Is everyone else getting the buffer problems? Let me know real quick, everyone, and I'll try to do something about it.
Yeah, yeah.
If it's just one person, unfortunately, I probably can't do anything about it. No, okay. I think that when it's that, I think it's such a beautiful game, personally. I love how beautifully mundane 15 is at times.
Oh, 100%.
It's a game that focuses on the slower moments is a beautiful thing. And that was when I was like, this is one of my new favorites. And then the second half happens.
Yeah.
and I don't even know if it's fair to call it a half, because really it's more like the final like 30%, but where the open world closes off and it just becomes a mad dash to the end, rushed as all hell, with, in my opinion, the worst ending in the series. And that soured a lot, like, for me. That really soured a lot. I think aesthetically, that Leviathan part is so good. I actually think Luna Freya's death had a lot of potential.
It's
Like,
such
I
a
was
beautiful-
like, this could get good, story wise. I wasn't even into the story before, but I didn't care. I loved, except for Ignis. Ignis is one of the best Final Fantasy characters ever, in my opinion. But like, and then after that, oh god, it's so rushed. Like, I think chapters 10 through 12 are like a couple fights and you run through a place and then you're done. Like that train chapter, it's over so fast, and I'm like, why are we going through this so fast? And then the worst part is, everyone probably knows what happens toward the end. They do like a World of Ruin kind of thing.
Yeah.
But that's the kind of thing that should happen, like...
They even call it the World of Ruin.
Oh, yeah.
If you
Oh,
remember.
yeah. But that's like the kind of thing that should happen halfway through your game. Like that major
like
change,
that.
like another game that will be appearing on our list that did it right. Instead, it happens in the last 90%. You have no time to take it in. And then it's just this mad dash to the end. And I hate the ending of Final Fantasy 15. I do. I really do. I love... Yeah. So you'll learn this about my list. I love endings with sacrifice. 13 and 10. I love endings where, like, it's a happy ending, but it comes at a cost.
Yeah.
15... it's just a downer ending, in my opinion, because you don't witness the result of character's sacrifice, you know? It just ends. And you're like, oh, okay. Like, I knew it was probably going to happen, but it's still kind of like, that left a sour taste in my mouth. I don't know. That's how I felt about it. I also think that the combat is really not good at all. I think 15 has the worst combat in the series.
The combat is really, really, I don't know. I think it's like, I guess it's not one dimensional
That's
combat,
true, Smell.
but it's not three dimensional. I think it's not third dimensional
It's
combat where there's a lot more depth to it. I
it's
think it's more like
boring. Like, you know, like
it's like two dimensional, like 1.5 2 dimensional combat. I think.
hi Oliver. The intensity of your combat, if you're into that sort of thing, if you like combat in RPGs, should not come from how many potions do I have. Which that game makes the bizarre choice of like every time you're about to die, you go in like this warning state where you have all the time in the world to just pop a potion and you're right back. So the the only danger you'd ever be in that game, like literally, is just if you didn't bring enough potions. And they're not hard to get. So it's like, that's the entire game. Like, and it's like, well, that's boring. It's just hold down button. All right, I'm almost dead. Pop potion. Hold down button. All right, I'm almost dead. Pop potion. All right, that's the entire game.
Yeah, every difficult combat encounter that I remember having in Final Fantasy 15 did boil down to an overall, like a battle of attrition or sheer dumb luck in summoning.
Yeah. Also, which the summons are awesome.
Also, very late spoiler alert for all of these Final Fantasy games. So there's that.
Which one?
I'm just saying, like, just very delayed spoiler warnings for all of these Final Fantasy games.
Yeah. I apologize, everyone. I will try my best not to. I apologize. I will try my best not to spoil. I am so sorry if I do on accident. Just know that it might happen.
I guess it kind of comes with the territory of ranking these and like discussing the.
If you're really gonna discuss them, and we're just having fun
when story beats are addressed,
and we're just having fun here. We're just having fun, you know. It's you will find out with this list, everyone, that the things I am often most critical about in games are pacing and story. You'll find out that very soon.
I do still have that book. I need to read it at some point.
Which one?
The Final Fantasy 15 follow-up novel.
Oh, okay, yes. Which, can we just say now, putting incredibly major important plot stuff for the dramatic tension of the story behind a movie, I'm not a fan of that.
Behind a movie, yeah. The fact that Final Fantasy 15 was in development on and off for like 12 years doesn't help it at all.
That's true, Carrot, or Denise, that's true. No, I'm sure the movie's fine. No, I'm sure the movie's fine. I'm just saying that should have been in the game. That's all I'm saying. It's like, that's a pretty important thing that I wish would have been in the game itself.
That 15 is just spread so wide. There's like a side scroller beat 'em up game that kind of
which I didn't even know until I beat it. I was like, what?
Yeah, there's that exists. There's Kingsglaive. There's the follow-up book. There's the 2 demos. There's this. There's that.
Oh, Kara. Okay, sorry about that. But yeah, I don't want to dwell on 15 too much. I think if the combat had been better, it would have balanced out the fact that the game is. It would have balanced things out, but it's the worst combat in the series, in my opinion. But
yeah, it's very
Oh yeah, I've heard that.
Yeah, Crystallis was like 3 parts of like Final Fantasy 13, Type 0, and 15.
I am not
all like loosely connected by a few threads.
I am not a fan of hiding anything that's important to just a singular product's story, like dramatic weight behind something else that you have to have also seen, unless that other thing was of the same genre or medium, if that makes sense. Like if it had been a game, sure. Like Kingdom Hearts 3, yes, the fragmentary passage helps with Kingdom Hearts 3 because you get the Aqua thing. Okay, fine enough. But like, I'm personally not a fan of that, especially since it makes it harder for like people who are just coming in and just want to enjoy like maybe a good story. Like they might not know that, like me, but anyway, still liked 15. I'm obviously not ranking it super low. So, like, still liked it, but I do think...
that thing is Surge of Cerberus.
Unless that thing is Surge of Cerberus! Halo 4s and 5s, because they do that, like, it's going out of style. Oh, they do the hiding behind other content? Anyway, let's not dwell on 15 too much.
Such a beast of its own.
Hi, Callie. Oh, boy. All right. This is gonna get interesting. Okay, hi, so dudes.
Oh.
These next two were batting
Okay.
heads in my head
All right.
for a while.
Okay.
And they almost could be tied,
All right.
but I am going to go with the Final Fantasy that everybody hates, Final Fantasy 13 next.
Final Fantasy 13.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I see you. I see you. I am a fan of Final Fantasy 13 myself.
13 is what I call a beautiful mess. I call 13, that is what I call 13. It is a Chrono Cross. It is there is so much wrong about 13, but there's something so charmingly wonderful about 13 at the same time.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
Now, the story, I'm gonna be honest with you all, I can't even fucking tell you what it was about. Like, I can tell you what happened, but what was it about? Generic JRPG, we will defy our fate, you're not the boss of us kind of thing. But in my opinion,
the deadlock exists.
What's that?
Also, the data log exists as like, here's an in-game supplementary text book.
Spoiler alert too. The data log tells a better story than 13 itself. It literally like has like really dramatic writing where it's like, this is more exciting than it was. Like, it actually tells you like what was going through a character's mind at the time.
If any like potential would-be writers or people who like writing in general are out there, if you get a copy of Final Fantasy 13 and like write a really cool novel of all the stuff in the data logs, that'd be super fucking cool.
That would be cool. That would be cool.
But send it to me, I will read it.
In my opinion, a lot of people shit on things that I didn't agree with 13. I think it gets a bad rap. And I think part of that is I watched the trailer for 13, which is one of the best video game trailers I've ever seen. And how can anyone not be disappointed after that? But like,
absolutely.
In my opinion, people shit on the characters. The characters in 13 are great. They're really good. They have all my favorite stuff, my personal favorite stuff. They're flawed. They have strengths. They have weaknesses. They all have a motivation. Oh, thank you for the YouTube sub. They all have a motivation. They all kind of do something in the story. Hello, 12. It uses them well. Problem is, they're stuck in a bad story. That's the problem.
Definitely, like on a mechanical spectrum, Final Fantasy 13 is mechanically the answer to Final Fantasy 12.
Yes, you can tell. Like while playing it, I'm like, this is a direct answer to and what I assume were the criticisms of 12. Now, I didn't have a problem with the hallway stuff because number one, linear RPGs happen all the time, and number two, more of the game actually is kind of a little bit more open because after you get to Grand Pulse, and even a little bit before you get to Grand Pulse, it's no longer linear. And if you play it the way you would play like FF6, where you're actually going to try to do everything in that part of the game, it's longer. So for the majority of the game, I think, I don't know. I think it battle system is another example of a beautiful mess. I think it's one of the best in the series, if incredibly flawed. Like the paradigm system is cool. Like it's strategic as hell. 13 is probably the most strategic of the Final Fantasy games, in my opinion. I had fun figuring out what paradigms would fit for, and it's one of those games where, oh my god, if you strategize well, it's really the entire fight, which is one of my biggest problems with it, because it means that in 13, doing side quests and grinding doesn't help much, which felt unsatisfying to me. That's one of my major problems with the game. I was in Grand Pulse for like 5 hours just trying to do like fighting stuff and getting extra content and stuff. I'm like, this will really help me, right? And then I realized, like, nah, if you don't have the right paradigms, nothing helps you. It's all that in the end. But it's still a cool battle system. I do think that the structure changes. That's something I do want to talk about with 13, is I kind of like how I kind of see what they were going for, in that the first half of the game is so linear and the second is is not, because it's kind of like the World of Ruin in 6, where like the World of Ruin is obviously supposed to be like thematic, because like it's a complete open world compared to the linear section of the first game, because it's chaos. Kefka represents chaos and everything's now chaos. So there is no structure. 13 does something similar. Cocoon is very like in order. It's kept together by its rules and its the government like subjugation. So so it's very linear and basic.
Yep.
Grand Pulse is a world of like complete mystery and danger. It's the Wild West that they don't understand. So it's incredibly non-structured. It's open. I see what they were going for, and I think it kind of worked in that way, personally.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I agree. And the combat, like everything's like Final Fantasy 13 is such a wildly cinematic game.
That's true, also, and I
into every aspect of it,
which is one of my favorite parts about it, because even though the story's not very
like the camera shifting for paradigm shifts. Whenever you look at like a character's stat profile, you see like a little a little animation from the character. How the Crystariums like has an animation of like slowly progressing towards like the next thing after that. All of it's just like this really
the cutscenes too. The cutscenes use very cinematic movie like angles and stuff, like more even than 15. Like that was something they were legit going for in 13 that I miss. It's almost feels like watching a movie when you're playing 13. It's very indicative of kind of that era, the PS3 era, where people thought games were like starting to become more like movies. Like, but it kind of works in my opinion. And even though the story's not great, I like 13's story still more than 12 and 15 because stuff actually happens. Like stuff's constantly at least happening in 13, and there's some really good character stuff, but 13 is one of those interesting games because you can talk about it for hours with people. You can bounce back on what worked, what didn't. I'm hearing that 13.2 is better. See, I've heard a lot of people say 13.2 is worse, so that's interesting.
13 is a very, very divisive Final Fantasy, almost as divisive as Final Fantasy 8 is.
Speaking of Final Fantasy VIII,
but just a remark on a chat comment from Cataclysm, paradigm system would work in combat that was more real time. The closest we get to that in the Final Fantasy 13 series is Lightning Returns, where you can shift between you can shift between different like paradigms, air quotes. It's based off of something similar to
I remember you telling me that. You were saying that Lightning Returns is like the best realization of the combat, right? In 13?
I 100% think that Lightning Returns is just like they were building up to making this combat system for Lightning Returns.
Okay.
And you can like actually move your character around a little bit more than you ever could in the series.
Okay.
You can switch paradigms on the fly with their own like custom. It's just a whole bunch of stuff. If you've played Final Fantasy 13 and you want to see more from it, 13.2 and Lightning Returns are definitely the way to go.
Take that into apply to it. One of the other problems with 13 is you can't position your party members. So like AoE attacks, like there's no way you're gonna be screwed. Like even if you have a sentinel taking all the damage, it doesn't matter. AoE attacks gonna attack everyone because you can't reposition your party.
Unless you like really know, like, okay, so this particular attack is gonna make them move this way, and all these like super weird, crazy in-depth. These attacks make this character do X, Y, and Z.
Mm-hmm.
But that's like way over analyzing. No normal casual player of Final Fantasy 13 is gonna reasonably do that unless they're crazy.
Now, I said speaking of 8, I'm so sorry everyone, because good God, am I shocked to see just how many people seem to just love FF8, and I think it's great. Now, I want to reiterate something. We've already gone through 6 of the games, so this is not a bad ranking. Please don't see it like this. Final Fantasy VIII. Okay, I really like it. Louis, let's get that out of the way right now, okay? I really liked 8. 8 is like 13 and 2. 8 is like 13 and 2 in that I love how many unique things 8 is trying. You have to give 8 so much credit for
8
trying to do so much, you know?
8 is very much like Final Fantasy 2 in that respect, because
Yeah,
Final Fantasy 2 is
but
also
better,
a
much better.
wildly experimental game. There's so much going on with like how Final Fantasy 8 is such a dynamically different game than its predecessor, Final Fantasy 7. Its
Which
storytelling
like
is very much
that's
more.
considering the success of 7. I know 8 sold better, but it only probably sold better because 7 broke the ceiling. But like
Yeah,
considering the success of 7 critically and everything, you gotta give him credit for like saying like let's shake it up already. Let's go. And I love that about 8. I think the junction system, while a little convoluted and a little too complicated, is still an incredibly cool idea. 8
there's
is
a lot
8,
about
8 is the
management.
most 8 is the most RPG of the Final Fantasy games. Is that fair to say? There's so many
Yeah,
stats and
it,
customization things in
I
8.
think I think it's the most like micromanagey, number crunchy, min maxy
Mitch, you're so
of
sweet.
the bunch,
You adore the
and
world in 8.
and
Yeah,
that's
8.
not a bad thing. I want to make that clear. That's not a bad thing. If you like that in your video game, then that's incredible. If you
Yeah.
don't like it, not. You know, it's all personal taste.
The music is amazing. There's so many good things about 8. Like you said, the world is like I think the idea of like starting it off as like you're a member in a school, like that's really interesting.
Yeah.
So
Also, yeah,
I'm
the
saying
music
all
is
good
great.
things. I think Laguna is pretty great. I like I said, junction system is a little too complicated for in my opinion. They kind of overdid it, but it's still a really cool idea. I love the girlfriend system. I'm sorry, Guardian Force system. I think it's
Yeah.
the idea that like you learn your abilities through your summons is really neat to me. I love stuff like that. 8 is beautiful looking. So where do my problems come with it, right? I think for me, and I'm sorry everyone,
Yeah.
but I think 8 has the worst story in the series.
Interesting.
Maybe. Here's my problem. So
let's
much
talk
of
about-
it is so much of it to me is just kind of nonsense and like melodrama without much reason to care, and just kind of like really convoluted wacky stuff that never really comes ahead.
Yeah.
But my biggest problem with the game, and I've mentioned this to my friends a lot, no character in 8 does jack shit besides Squall and Renoa. None of them.
Yeah.
None of them do anything. They have their one moment, and then they fuck off for the rest of the story. Quistis, I think I might be in love with Squall. That's it.
Zell is introduced.
Giselle is introduced. Selfie, this is my home village. That's it. Irvine, I'm actually secretly a coward underneath. Oh, that's interesting. That's it.
Aw. But the thing with Final Fantasy VIII story that I've heard people compare it to, at least in like the pacing and the presentation of the story, is that it's more like an opera.
And I've heard that. I think that's a really interesting concept. What about the seed assault on the other guard? Well, yeah, at least they have something to do there. I'm not sure if I'd call that character stuff, unless I'm remembering wrong, which, to be fair, I did play 8 a year ago.
The game definitely has moments.
Yeah, Janos ruined Irvine for me. I was like, this is an interesting character. But, like, I just don't... Ultimecia has no presence. I'm not a fan of villains that don't have a presence, unless it's done really well. So much of 8 to me is just melodrama and just stuff like I'm told to care about more than it's a lot of exposition, just kind of not the kind of stuff I like. Now, take note. It's high on my list. It's decently high on my list. I think it's a beautiful mess, because I think no one will argue 8 is flawed. But like, and then there's the whole thing about, yeah, you can break the game if you know what you're doing, but like,
a lot of these games are like that.
a lot of these games are like that, to be honest. A lot of these games are like that. But like, there is the other thing, like the draw system. How repetitive must that have been without the fast forward feature? It's just like 12 where I'm like, people played this without the fast forward feature.
Yeah, we did it and we liked it.
They liked it. more power to you. You know, like I am not here to shit on anyone's. I liked 8 a lot. I liked 8 a lot. I think Squall is. Ugh, I do not like Squall at all. Because Squall, unlike some other characters who change for the better, Squall just changes because he falls in love with girl. He doesn't even treat the rest of the party that well after he changes. He's not like a certain other spiky haired kid that will appear on this list where I really got their metamorphosis, but Laguna is better than Squall.
Yeah, Laguna is the better.
You can mod it and skip all the drawing? That's kind of cool. I loved it. Put it in my veins, kid. Hey, more power to you. This is my list. This is not the definitive one. And 8 is good. Look, it's B tier. It's B tier.
To be fair, you didn't treat the rest of the cast as well either. Yeah, that's true.
That's very true. One could argue that they deserved it. Yeah, I can see that, Aurora. Yeah. Squall
is literally 16.
Squall is very much the teenage angst character. And I think for people going through that at the time, he could probably be a decently strong character, I would imagine. I didn't play it as a teen, but I would imagine that Squall spoke to a lot of teenagers who were kind of going through that angsty period of their lives. I don't know, but I think it's really cool how many people now defend 8. Because I really do want to stress that, like, unlike 2 and maybe even to a certain extent, like 12, that frustrated me a lot. Like 8 didn't frustrate me as much. It was just more like, it was very flawed but beautiful. It's kind of like Chrono Cross, which 8 has a lot of Chrono Cross vibes. Fun fact, if anyone's ever played Chrono Cross, and I think they were developed around the same time, but
that would track, yeah. But yeah, the whole teenage angst thing, Squall is literally 16. So this is actual teenage angst.
Right. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And Quistis, I want to step on me despite not having much of a character. But I think most people would agree, right, that the characters kind of get thrown out after a certain period. They don't do much, which I love a game with a good cast. Maybe that'll reveal some of the higher up entries. Okay. So I personally am giving 8 its own section because I think 8 is kind of in that in between of like, it's great, but not quite getting up to like the amazing levels for me. But this is where I have a lot of trouble because the next 2, I'm not even sure yet which order this is going to be because these are both phenomenal games, but picking which one goes next, they're almost tied, just so you know, everyone. And they come right after each other. Can you guess what they are?
4 and 5, I would guess.
He nailed it. Yeah.
All right, look at me go.
I think I'm gonna go with 4 next. This is probably a bit of a controversy. A lot of people's favorite Final Fantasy ever is 4, and for good reason. 4 is the one that I think of when I hear the word Final Fantasy. 7 and 4. 7 for obvious reasons, but even though 4 isn't my favorite, I just think of 4 because 4 was my second one ever. I was so hyped for it coming out on the DS. 4 is so good. It's a fantastic RPG. I think you could make the claim that like it kind of would almost only get better after that in certain aspects. Like 4 is so good, but like it doesn't have anything nowadays that makes it particularly stand out from the other ones. The DS is like the Gambit system. I mean, not the Gambit system, the Augment system, which I kind of liked, and then obviously it introduced the ATB, which is really cool. The ATB. 4 is just your all around. That's the best That's the best like baseline Final Fantasy game you can get. Like, it is. There's so many memorable assets and things about 4. Oh my god, theme of love, the freaking main theme, so good. Like it's kind of just
iconic. It's the theme on the moon.
Yeah.
The lunar whale, the Tower of Zion, the Tower of all of it. It's pretty good. It's
Yeah,
got some really good music.
Four's story, while basic, it still gets the job done, in my opinion. It works. It's got some decent plot twists. Like,
Mhm.
I mean, Golbez's identity is kind of interesting. It does pull the old traditional RPG shit of, oh, it was secretly some dude we've never even met before. But
Also in Final Fantasy 3.
yes, and another one coming up on our list.
Yeah.
But yes, redemption arcs. I was about to get to that. I love Cecil Harvey. He is one of my favorite protagonists in the series. He's not particularly deep compared to most of these, but I just think the whole idea of a character who completely swaps appearance, and you don't see many RPGs do that, is such a cool idea. I do wish you could. He changes his job permanently. I do kind of wish you could go back to Dark Knight, because like in Dissidia you can swap between the two, which would make him the ultimate. But like the idea of like that clash of light and dark is so cool. You could make the argument, of course, that Cecil's character development stops after that.
Which it does.
Which it does. You'd be right.
Actually,
But
no, I tell a lie. There are like 2 or 3 other beats, but like the main focus of Cecil's story ends at his redemption arc.
Thanks, Flora, for the follow. I agree. From that moment on, his only character development, which you can't really call character development, is, oh, I don't actually dislike this guy because he's my brother. like that's pretty much it. Yeah. Kane is just kind of a worse Riku, if anyone's ever played Kingdom Hearts. Because like unlike Riku, whose weakness comes from a lot of his own internal flaws, Kane is just magic brainwashed in it. Which takes advantage of his flaws, but at the same time, it's kind of weaker. But he's fine. There's a reason Kane's on the cover. Apparently, he's the one they thought everyone would just, oh no, not FF10 Riku. That'd be funny. But like 4, oh god, 4's music. 4, in my opinion, might have top 3 soundtracks in the series. It's so iconic.
Yeah, it has some consistently like really cool bangers throughout the whole thing.
Yeah. Some of the aesthetic, god, the lunar whale is so cool looking. The only major issue I have with 4, aside from the fact that like a lot of it is just like there's nothing particularly outrageously great about it. Like there's nothing that truly stands out aside from it just being incredibly solid, and I think this is just because of what it was at the time. Yeah, so many good set pieces. That's such a good point. Is no character dies in 4. Okay. 4 has so many moments of sacrifice and drama and sadness, and then every character just comes back at the end. No character stays dead except for one old fart who's just literally just dies an old angry fart. Poor Tella,
who mechanically used a spell that had more MP than he actually had available to him, and that caused him to
die. Zeta flared. Which like
Tella's the only one who dies, and it's really, really
why?
Weird.
Like keep some people love that. I get it. You don't want to see your favorite characters die. I like that I like death. I like when my favorite characters die. I like a sense of sacrifice and sadness to a story every now and then. But nope. Nobody dies in 4. Nobody.
Why not? They're talking like Sid blew himself up because Sid is just like this really cool engineer.
It's a cute. It's a super fun, emotional little sacrifice. He mentions how he was like hoping to see their children after they get married, and
just like
how does Sid survive?
Like it's so cool, and then you just see him in the dwarf cast. I was like, what?
Rain, I won't be doing 11. I actually mentioned this in the very beginning of the stream. 11 is the only one I don't feel confident enough because I haven't played enough to play. Yeah, so in a sense, I'm cheating. But, 11's good, if you want my answer on that. Like, where would I place it for now? Probably right before 8. Or maybe right after 8. Yeah, I haven't played enough of it. I don't feel at all equipped to judge 11 properly. It could get so much better after what I played. I don't know. But, no, I hear you. I have that with World of Warcraft as well. You're playing through 14 now? We'll get to 14. Oh, boy.
Oh,
but 4, it's great. 4 is great. It's just, And this was, they are almost tied. But the reason 5 eclipses it, despite having the worst of the two stories, is holy shit, is that job system so fucking good. 5 is the most, I'm going to say it right now, 5 is the most underrated Final Fantasy game. You never hear people talk about 5, probably because they don't.
Yeah, except for all the people I hear talking about Final Fantasy V. I've heard quite a few people liking Final Fantasy V, but people talk about other ones more.
They do.
Like,
and
like the idea of like your characters can kind of change their jobs on the fly, like in Final Fantasy 3.
Yeah.
Final Fantasy V does this on a much grander and a much better scale.
Mm-hmm.
Mechanically, 5 is the idealized version of Final Fantasy 3.
I want to play Tactics so badly. I've heard people legit call Tactics the best Final Fantasy game. Like, wow. Wasn't 5?
We're going to rank the Final Fantasy movies.
We need to rank the Final Fantasy movies. Oh boy, that would be interesting. I've only seen 3 of them.
We have Kingsglaive, we have Advent Children, Final Fantasy 7.
Oh,
we have Spirits Within.
Spirits Within, which I've heard is good.
It is a good.
Is the single best FF? Yeah, I've heard that. But
don't know any other Final Fantasy movies. Hit me up if you know what other ones there are.
If I had to guess, 5 is not talked about as much because the story is not quite as good as most of them. Butts isn't the most endearing protagonist. He's fine. Most of the characters are fine. Sure. 5 did do the main character death sad thing before 7. R.I.P. Galuf, but like X-Death is not particularly a memorable villain. It's all serviceable, and 5 would easily be one of the lower ones because everything else is just okay, but it is jettisoned by its absolutely, well, music, but it's absolutely amazing battle system and job system. Because like in 5, for those who don't know, your abilities from one job can carry over into another. And not only does that just create endless replay value, but so much strategy and customization to it that I didn't even appreciate fully until my second time playing it. And it is the only one with Necromancer.
Yeah. And the introduction of Gilgamesh. One of
the
most iconic Final Fantasy anti-heroes, or
5
anti-villains, whatever you want to call them.
5 automatically earns the spot for having battle over the bridge. What else do I need to say?
Battle over the Bridge is such an absolutely, like, when you think of like some really cool iconic battles in Final Fantasy series,
Goga was in it.
That one comes up a lot.
Gilgamesh is such a great character.
Of course.
Yeah. See, I think it was done better in 5 though than 12. Or 11. Never mind. 11's job system. Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Can I send you cursed buff Barts from? Oh God, please. Do.
Oh yeah, the Final Fantasy V OVA, which was only in Japan. But yeah, Final Fantasy V took a very long time to make it to the States. Not as long as 3.
Yeah.
Because 3 didn't come out in the States until 2006, like some 20 years after it come out.
Wasn't 5 Sakaguchi's original favorite before 9?
I think so.
I think he said something about that. It's great. So. Play it, everyone. It's the most underrated Final Fantasy, in my opinion. There's not much to say. There's not much to say because everything else is just kind of just good, not like amazing. But it's the best job system in the mainline numbered ones, in my opinion, for sure. And it's everything else is good. There's nothing particularly bad about 5. Yeah. It's good.
Yeah, it was like butts or something like that, and it was like, oh yeah, it's clearly butts.
So, how's everyone feeling so far? Are we? How do you like the list? I'm just curious.
I am thoroughly irritated and very mad. I'm going to post all the angry comments down below.
Yeah, I'm canceled. I'm on board. Okay, yeah. Again, this is just for fun, but I wonder if anyone has any predictions on what's gonna make some of the top entries.
Yeah, what's gonna make some of the top ones beyond the ones we haven't gone through yet?
You respect it? Okay. All right. So, I think we can all agree that what we have left here is kind of what are widely regarded by many to be some of the best ones. So this is where This is where it's gonna get clinching. This is where we're gonna clinch. And oh boy, oh god, oh boy.
Where do we begin with the S tiers?
If you're assuming it's S tier next.
Or do we still have more A's?
Yeah, we have more A tiers. I am gonna go with. Okay, let's preface this by saying from here on out, these games all range from just like incredibly good to masterpieces. So this is not. There's no. Don't think of this at all as like a disservice. Hopefully to these games.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna go with the Disney Final Fantasy.
Ooh, anyone know what the Disney Final Fantasy is before we call it out?
We got 9.
I was gonna say put it in the comment section.
I should have. I know. I already clicked it. I felt so bad.
I'm trying to get into like a podcasting spirit.
Yeah. No.
Because
I fucked it up. You had the spirit. I had the klutziness. So one of my friends is gonna kill me for my ranking of 9. So 9.
You know who you are.
9 is one of those ones where when it's good, it's so incredibly good, but I do have a few issues with it.
Okay.
I love the aesthetic of 9. It was at the time billed as like a return to the series roots, and it shows. 9 probably has the best character arcs in the whole damn series. Like every character in 9, aside from Quina maybe, and Amarant or whatever his name is because he sucks. They all kind of have their little stories and their development, and they all change. All of them. It's really, really beautiful. Like really beautiful. It has one of the best love stories in my opinion, which is almost never done well in video games in my opinion. It's almost never done well in fiction in general. Because it's usually one-sided or sexist or something, but you kind of believe Dagger and Zidane's relationship. You kind of do. 9's theme song is a real tearjerker. Yeah.
Talking about trance. We'll talk about the combat mechanics of Final Fantasy IX.
Yeah, we will. Not the card game for 9 was terrible. Yeah, I've heard it's no triple triad, which I never really played either. But
yeah.
9 is imaginative. It's one of those ones that like just is fully in love with its own world. The characters are tremendous. The gameplay's good.
The environments are gorgeous.
I have 2 major issues with 9. Yes, it pulls the whole, secretly it was this other douchebag the whole time. Probably the worst case of that because, good God, Necron comes the fuck out of nowhere. But
you got a cool boss theme though.
Yeah. Kuja is one of the better villains. Kuja's good. Yeah. Has a lot more depth than you might think. Vivi, I think everyone will agree, is one of the best characters in the whole series. Everybody loves Vivi. I mean, you got a little cute mage going through an existential crisis about his existence and death. It gets dark.
No one talks about Amarant.
Because Amarant sucks. Look, they just didn't write anything for him. He doesn't do anything. Everyone else
has a lot of callbacks to the older Final Fantasies. We're looking at Garland as a featured character. We got Pandemonium, where like the theme of Pandemonium is playing in the background. You're there.
I knew someone was going to say that Octanus.
Version of that. It's so.
Vivi's definitely the melee of. Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Yeah.
And everyone has the cool tattoos. Aika's kind of cute, I guess.
9 gets deep. You got to give it that. My problem with 9, there are two main ones. But it's still great. But I'm a wannabe writer. I don't claim to be like a good writer, but I studied writing a lot. I put a lot of my heart into it. And I personally think that 9 has this issue where kind of whenever the story could take a really exciting turn with the events, it does the most obvious and boring way to play out those events. Like, it's a really weird issue I have with it. Because, like,
Yeah.
there's a part where you lose Steiner from your party for a while. With, I believe it's Beatrix. Beatrix, by the way, is the best character in the whole game and one of my favorite characters ever. And we'll get to her in a second. But, and I was thinking, like, they're going to make a really exciting return. Because they've been gone for a long time. Like, this is going to be... They're building up to this. This could be really good. They just show up. You just cut to a scene and they're just there. And it's like, well, that wasn't as exciting as I was hoping it would be. It does that a lot. I don't know. I feel like nobody else probably has this problem. This is where I get weird and nitpicky and
I can
stupid,
understand
but-
where you're coming from.
it just kind of, it's a good story, but it kind of always just takes the boring way out a lot of times, in my opinion, where it's just like, I feel like that could have happened more excitingly, where it's more like a play than it is like a story almost. I don't know.
Yeah,
But
I think that is the intention and the design of it, because there's, you got like all these really cool, fun set pieces. The main character's a part of this like
so true, Fenrir. So true.
this like theater troupe that moonlights is actually like a band of thieves. There's a lot of that in
Yeah.
in 9, for sure.
Yeah. My other major problem with 9,
Yeah.
I hate Final Fantasies that do this.
Mhm.
80% of the game, you can't pick your party. It is,
Yeah.
they are broken up throughout the whole game. And as somebody who was just dying for, like, because I love these characters, Jakir, man, thank you so much for the follow. As someone who was dying because I love these characters, who just wanted her Zidane, Vivi, Freya, Steiner party, I can't get it until halfway through the last disc. And by then it's over. And it's like, oh, that part. 13 kind of does it too. And so does
But it's also
somewhat
so
6. But
it's also like so satisfying when you finally like
you're not
yes,
wrong.
finally get to this point where you know all the pieces that I've wanted.
You're
are
not
finally
wrong.
coming together. The jigsaw puzzle is finally complete. I have my master party.
And some people would probably argue that some people probably like it. They probably like that it's more realistic and that these characters wouldn't always be together. And I get that. I can agree with that, Aurora. I can agree with that because it's got some tremendously. Sid is great in 9. It's fucking like frog thing the whole time.
As like I forget the name of what they like the creature that he's turned into, and how Steiner's is like
yeah. Sid is great. Beatrix is the biggest case of should have joined your party I've ever seen in any RPG. Beatrix has Magus written all over her. Like, how does she not join your party? I have issue, Square. How does she not join your party? Is I guess the excuse is that she's too powerful? How does she was born to join that party and she never does it, except for like one fight. It's like, what the frick?
and speaking of fights, do you want to go into the combat mechanics of Final Fantasy IX now, or do you want to wait a little bit?
I think it has one of the better ones. I think it's pretty good, actually.
Final Fantasy IX's combat, it's much more
Definitely Stelios. Exactly.
The pacing of it is a lot different compared to its predecessor. If we look at the combat in 9 compared to the combat in 8, 8 is a lot more fast-paced in a lot of respects.
Yeah.
You can get, like super strong, super quick, and just take things out really quickly. 9 is really sluggish by comparison.
Yeah,
And
you're not wrong. Yeah.
by design. Someone in the chat was definitely talking about this earlier with trance and how like the trance animation is so long, and that is intentional.
Yeah. Trance is not the most well thought out system too. It's just like kind of
like music and the scenery and the design of the enemies, things like that. And not just completely related to the game, despite the fact that one of the best weapons in the game is locked behind you beating the game in like 12 hours.
Trance is meh. Trans is yeah.
Trance is
Chrono cutie of you. No, stop it, Violet. What are you doing? So that's 9. So good. And I know I broke probably a few hearts there, but it's got problems, in my opinion. It's not the sacred one that people make it out to be, in my opinion, but it's still great.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
9 is one of the ones I want to replay the most.
Yeah, there's a mod for Final Fantasy IX that exists out there for the PC version of the game where it's like, like how in the remasters of these Final Fantasy games, like the character models look really great, but the
Congrats,
backgrounds
Violet.
meh. There's a mod
Yeah,
that exists
yeah.
in Final Fantasy IX where it also like redoes all the backgrounds and it looks absolutely gorgeous. But it's such a huge game. It's such a huge file for the mod. It's like the entire size of the game plus.
I can agree with that, Fenrir. Iggy, thanks for the cheer.
So
Oh boy, I think we're at S tier. I think it's either we're at S tier or only one more in A tier. But
something like that. Let's talk about this next one then.
Oh boy. Wow. How do I rank these?
Where
Oh
are we
boy.
going to go next?
All right. I mentioned how 9 is sacred. But I'm about to do the thing that shits on the actual sacred, perfect, quote unquote one. We're doing it. We're doing it.
And you're gonna move Final Fantasy 2 back up to S?
Yeah. We are finally at the Final Fantasy game, 7.
Oh yeah, the most iconic Final Fantasy game out there that I kind of don't care for.
Yeah, it's an S tier. So, okay. 7, I need to preface this by saying it might change dramatically if I replay it. It is one of the ones I played quite a while ago. I think I played it 3 years ago for the first time. But I just think it's kind of like, and this is fitting enough that it's like Ocarina of Time in that it's just an incredibly solid RPG. I think the battle system is quick and fast and satisfying. The enemies are well balanced. The materia system, in my opinion, is super fun. It's simple enough, but it's fun that you get a level of customization to it. It's just a really good RPG. Do I have problems with it? Yes, we're gonna get into that. But like, obviously, there's so many iconic things about 7 for good reason. Like that world is so well thought out and well realized, and the world building of 7 is tremendous. Midgar itself is an entire world. Like you I don't know. To me, like, you just really get the feel of that world. It feels lived in. It feels well developed. That's 7 all around, honestly. It feels like a game that's very in love with its own world. Tifa slanders herself in OG7. Well, now that everyone's played Remake Part 1, going back to the original is tough and easy at the same time. Needs a friend like Barrett. Oh, Barrett's so good, especially in Remake. For the time, it's amazing. Playing it in 2020 made me see how parts of it didn't age. And yes. Yeah. Is Tetsuya Nomura who designed Cloud?
Yeah,
I don't think Nomura wrote anything in the original 7, did he?
Nomura originally started off as a character designer.
Yes, he actually started as an environmental designer. He worked on Chrono Trigger.
He did design the characters for like Final Fantasy 7, I think onwards until he started doing his own thing.
What's all the way to the right in A tier? Final Fantasy 4.
Designer for 7.
Yeah, Nomura didn't. Yeah, and it shows with the remake, but. No, he did environments in Chrono Trigger. Anyway, there's so many things about 7 that I think deserve the praise it gets. I really do. I think the music is maybe my favorite soundtrack in the series. Aerith's theme is just absolutely beautiful. The main theme is absolutely beautiful. The battle theme is rocking and fast. Where I have issues with it is and my friend brought this up the other day. It's kind of true. A lot of 7 is filler. A lot of 7, nothing's happening. I personally think the Midgar section is the strongest point of the game's story. I think it's the most like rich of the world building. Like, you get to know the characters. There's some good twists, good turns. I actually think that the story kind of gets worse after Midgar, even though the gameplay and world obviously get a little better. but
Yeah.
because a lot of 7, nothing really happens, and I think even the most like biggest defenders of it probably have to admit that. Yeah, exactly. They prove that they can make an entire game out of Midgar. We'll get to that, but after you leave the city, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly, Fenrir, exactly.
Where, like it starts like, okay, I can get into Final Fantasy VII, and then it just kind of like drags
Yeah.
for it. It dragged for me, and like by then I'm like starting like by then I'm like kind of starting to lose interest near the end, which
Sonic, thank you so
kind
much
of
for the
not.
raid.
It's a thing, I guess. Oh hey, nice raid.
Oh yeah, Yagi, I'm glad. I haven't really upset anyone yet. That's awesome. I love the cast. Violet, thank you for the host.
I'm not a big fan.
I love the cast of 7. I'm gonna say it. I love the cast of 7. I think almost every character is great. Now, obviously, Vincent and Yuffie don't have much to do, but they're not supposed to. They're optional party members, so it's fine. Barrett was a little underwritten, but the remake totally perfected him. The cast is great. The cast is great. They're memorable. Their character designs are great. You all know how I feel about Aerith. I just think Aerith is such a beautiful character in that she kind of just like proves that like girls can be both incredibly feminine and dress feminine, but also be badasses and sassy. We all know everyone loves Tifa. I'm not as much of a fan of Tifa as most people, but I get it. Like, and she's kind of the opposite. Tifa's proof that a tough, hard exterior can still be coupled with a really loving and caring personality. Like, I love that. I think they're very strong female characters in that sense. Red 13, Nanaki is my little baby. I love him.
And it's got a great theme to it as well.
But here's where I'm going to tell you 7's overrated. Sephiroth sucks.
Yeah. Now, in the defense of Sephiroth, he was voiced by a really great voice actor.
That's true.
That's about it.
Yeah. Sephiroth is... Okay, he has a little more depth than some of the earlier villains. He's got a backstory. But Sephiroth's entire thing is that he became a psychopath for a reason that really shouldn't have turned him into a sudden, deadly, vicious psychopath.
Yep.
And I mentioned this about Ultimisia. I guess there's some debate about it. But Sephiroth isn't even in most of the game. He gets so much credit, and it's Jenova doing a lot. I guess it's debatable whether or not he was controlling Jenova, but he's still not felt. To me, like, you don't feel like he's like, in there much. I like my villains to have a presence, if that makes sense. And Sephiroth just kind of dicks around and does nothing until they find him at the crater, and then he doesn't even have much dialogue, either. He's not as cool. He's not as cool as people say he is, in my opinion. He's just... And I think that sword's compensating for something. If I'm gonna be completely honest,
he's got the big black wing and the nice leather
jacket. Yeah. But
he's also just like this really overglorified, long katana, pretty boy.
He does have
If anyone has like read Berserk or knows anything about Berserk, Sephiroth's kind of like a Griffith.
There you go. Take Joey's word for it.
He's kind of like a Griffith a little bit.
A lot of people do.
Cloud to guts.
A lot of people do say Sephiroth is overrated, so they agree with me on that. But the other character people sometimes say is overrated that I do love is possibly my favorite protagonist in the whole series, and that's Cloud. I fucking love Cloud. I was going into 7, hearing so many of my friends talk about how overrated Cloud is and how shitty Cloud is. And Cloud is one of the only characters in the whole series that has an arc. A really good arc, mind you. He's a completely different character. Oh, he's literally a different character at the end.
Knights of the Red is so good.
Like, I think Cloud is fantastic. I really do. I think he's such a likable character. He's a representation of trauma and what it can do to, and as somebody that's close to me because my sister goes through it. That does happen. Your memory will literally get wiped from events so traumatic like that. And Cloud, I guess you could argue that he only develops because he realizes that he's not who he thought he was. But I think it works. I don't know. I see more to it than that, and I always really loved his character for that. And I personally think that despite what people say, I think he changes a lot at the end. You don't have a character saying "let's mosey" at the end, and like tell me that that's not like a character who's suddenly like gotten a lot like, has changed a lot. Hey Josh, I love Cloud. And I'm personally of the opinion that like they unwrote him in the subsequent stuff. I hate him in Advent Children. I don't like him in Kingdom Hearts because I'm like, he kind of changed. I don't know, but
yeah, and then he just kind of like has the reverse character development. It's kind of sad.
Which I'm kind of not a fan of, but I do in 7. I love Cloud, and remake is doing such a great job with him.
Crisis Core does a pretty good job at like characterizing Cloud.
Yeah, Crisis Core has got some really good characterization and stuff. So 7, it's the Final Fantasy for a reason. It's a little overrated in my opinion, but it's still incredibly good. It's in my opinion. Now speaking of 7 remake, I tossed this around for a lot. Which one was the better one?
Oh man, Final Fantasy VII Remake. Do I have some takes about that?
Final Fantasy VII Remake.
I have some bones to pick with Final Fantasy VII Remake.
I have a lot of bones to pick with Final Fantasy VII Remake, but the thing about
you first.
Oh, sorry. I want to ask chat. What did we all think of the remake? Because I feel like it was mostly well received, incredibly well received.
Oh, it is a very well received game. That's why my take of being disappointed by the concept of it is a hot take.
Okay, a game that I need to get back to. Remake is fantastic. You hurt my soul. How did I hurt your soul though? It's high. It's very high.
I think specifically I hurt their soul.
Oh, okay. That's fair. Okay.
I'm spitting out these hot takes about why remake Final Fantasy VII with all these extra weird plot bits when you could have just remade Final Fantasy VII and just made the story of Final Fantasy VII
we'll get to
better
that.
engine.
We'll get to that.
And kind of overplay. Yeah, that whole thing.
Remake is the word that, or like, is in my opinion, when it is good, it's the best Final Fantasy game. The characterization of remake is phenomenal. The characters are better than the original 7. They nailed it. And that's like what you want to see in a remake, right? That's why you make a remake, in my opinion. Like the characters are so good. There's parts of cinematic beauty that are so good in remake. When it is good, it is fucking amazing. I think it has maybe the best battle system in the whole series, unless if you're separating action and turn-based, and even maybe then. It's so good. There's so many good things about it. The wall market chapter is like my favorite chapter of any Final Fantasy game. I fucking love it so much. I love it. I love it. I have not played FF6. Cancel this stream. We'll get to it. But it's so good when it's good. Oh my god, is it so good when it's good? But somebody just mentioned this, and it's my biggest problem with the game, is it has padding out the fucking wazoo. Because obviously they had to make a game based only on Midgar. Now I'm sure they were worried we have to make it long to make people feel like that their purchase was worth it. But in my opinion, in my opinion, they didn't need to make it as long because it comes to the cost of some padding issues and pacing issues.
Yeah. Like,
oh god, I hate the Hojo lab section in that game so much. I hate it. Things are ramping up. You see Sephiroth, Cloud jumps at him. Things are like really ramping up. It's getting super exciting. You're nearing the end of the story, and then you fall off a bridge and dick around in Hojo's lab doing absolutely nothing for an hour, just killing the pacing. Because I like pacing. It probably wasn't a problem for a lot of people, but there's a lot of sections where you're just like going through long crawl spaces disguised as like loading sections to make and padding to make the game longer. There's that chapter where they find Wedge and then Barrett randomly falls down. The game does that a lot. The game does that a lot where things are, in order to get characters in a situation where the game can be longer, they fall off something. Which, like, as a storyteller, I'm not a fan of that, but
There's a fun segment that like helps with Aerith's character a little bit, where she almost falls off of something.
yeah, and to be fair, that was a part of the original. Cloud falls off the bridge and falls into the church. So, but like, that's main story, so I don't know if that counts.
Yeah.
But like,
The remake is an ocean nightmare.
the other problem I have, this is where it's gonna get controversial, because some people absolutely love this part of it, some people don't. But I hate the time ghosts. I hate.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan.
That's where I'm at too.
Yeah, it's obviously we know what they're going for. Like it's not a true remake. It's more of a sequel, to be quite honest, because
it's more of a sequel.
It's really more of a sequel.
And that's my big thing too.
Which some people like that because they wanted something new. That's totally fair, because they're like, well, I already know the original. Okay, yeah, sure, I get that. But to me, the whole idea of making a remake was to take the original and improve it with modern day technology and new understanding of video games. But instead, I'm really worried about where the future of the series is going, because I hate those time ghosts. They feel so out of place. They feel so Kingdom Heartsy in all the worst ways. I don't like them. I could get into it for a long time, but hey, that's just why it ranks here in my list, because I think everything else, literally probably every single other part of it, is a masterpiece. It's so, when it's good, it's so good. When it's following the original too, it's even better than the original. It's so, yeah, remake is, God, I love it, but God, I get mad at it.
Yeah, we'll see more when we get to see more. Just please, Nomura, don't do us dirty.
I actually kind of like the train graveyard section because it has that little part with Aerith, but I get why people don't. But remake, I'm not shitting on it. I freaking love it. And it just came out in 60 frames per second, and oh my God, is that great? And these are, for a lot of people, this is stuff that doesn't really apply to them. They probably don't like care about this kind of stuff but this is my list, right? So, but yeah, there you go. It's a tremendously good game, despite any of those issues I said with it.
I love that Skeletor emote.
How do we do this? We are down to the final 3.
Oh boy. Where do we go from here? Do we roll a die? That would be the funniest thing. Like, yeah, let's just do this.
Never in my life did I ever imagine that an MMO entry in a franchise could rank this high, but such is the power of Final Fantasy XIV.
Why does it sound like I'm in an echo tunnel? That's a good question. I don't know.
Okay, that's possible. Because, okay, wait. Can you still hear him now? Joey, go ahead and talk.
Hello? Hi, hello.
I mean,
if the echo tunnel gave me like so much more gravitas to what
that's what I was
saying.
hoping, because I have your volume actually as loud as it goes. Oh, actually, maybe I can do this though. Maybe I can do this.
Echoing.
Maybe
I don't know.
Maybe I can do this. Maybe I can. Yeah, I love all the people saying yes because of the 14 love. Okay, did that help? Joey, go ahead and talk.
Do I have to make myself louder? I kind of don't want to because I'm already pretty high on my decibels.
No, I think
not so much volume as this echo.
I think you're good.
Weird.
Is that better?
Yeah, weird sound incoming. Real quick.
Gotta get some rest. Good night, Callie. Is that better? We good?
See if that fixed remotely anything.
Mwah. Fixed. Awesome. Okay, cool.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, simple level. Sorry about that. How long did that persist for, chat? I want to know because
I'm sorry. I didn't know. I'm glad Josh brought it up. I'm so sorry, everyone. I'm so sorry. Um. So
Most of the stream. Oh, good lord.
let me ask you a question,
Alright.
chat.
I'm a little embarrassed.
Let me ask you a question, chat. Would you ever expect in a series like Final Fantasy that an MMO would have maybe the best story in the entire series? Neither would I. But that's Final Fantasy 14 for you.
Oh my god, yes.
So 14, I only have one major issue, and it's an encompassing issue, which we'll get to. So let's just get the good out of the way. It's incredible. It's such a phenomenally well-made thing. It is. The world is so rich. The characters are so great. They have all changed over time. People have become so enamored and in love with this world. I think there's so much power in that, in a series where people talk about only 80% of the time. People are now talking about 14 almost more. People have fallen in love with Final Fantasy 14, and it is wonderful. It is beautiful. That is so awesome because it deserves it. Like, it's so good.
As a similar aside, recently there was like a list of like, oh, you know, here's all the active players of, you know, these different MMOs. Very recently has FF14 exceeded World of Warcraft in the amount of active players there are currently.
Yeah. And rightfully so. And yes, oh god, yeah, 14's
out there.
World of Warcraft's story doesn't even hold a candle to 14. Now, yes, ARR is like just like okay in the story front. I personally thought Heaven's Word was just okay. Just, oh god, Dragon Song was fucking amazing. Shadowbringers is absolutely incredible. Possibly the best story ever told in a Final Fantasy game. The characters are so good. It's so good.
Yeah.
It's yeah, play 14, everyone. It's so good. It's like you forget it's an MMO sometimes.
It's critically acclaimed MMO, free trial up to level 60 through the Heaven's Ward expansion, the award-winning expansion that it is. You know, free trial. Play it, experience it, enjoy it.
It has the best villain in the entire series, and Aurora just alluded to that. It's so good. It's such a great... You can tell... The best thing about 14 to me is there is vision behind 14. It's a work of art. It is a person's vision, clearly. Like, unlike other series like Kingdom Hearts, where I feel like they're just making it up as they go along, 14 just has this, like, we know what we're doing and we have a plan kind of feeling to it. It's so... Yoshi-p is a fucking god. Like, look at what he did to this game that was like doomed. Like, it's so amazing. There's such a development to everything going, and every expansion builds off the last in such a... It's... People give like a lot of these overarching complicated series stories like Kingdom Hearts a lot of credit for, but I'm like, 14 is even more impressive to me because I don't think some people realize it's been the same story since the original A Realm Reborn that just keeps compounding. It's incredible. It's a writing miracle. You like, it's too good to be an MMO, which brings me to one issue with 14. It's an MMO.
Yeah.
That's my one problem with 14 is
like, oh, it's an MMO. You play on a keyboard and mouse. This game has active controller support, and the controller support is good. I've been playing Final Fantasy 14 for over 4.5 years now.
Yeah.
And I exclusively play on controller, even though I'm on PC. The controller support is that good.
Yeah. And
if that's your concern,
I think
they've got you covered.
There are moments where it's so good that it transcends being an MMO, but for me personally, it is still an MMO. And that's why it's not like my absolute favorite, because I'll take a turn-based battle system any day over an MMO battle system. I'll take an action-based battle system There's a lot of tedious side quests, obviously, to fill out the time. There's a lot of go search in that circle for the thing. Not the most exciting stuff. Characters kind of talk very wooden sometimes and still, and it's not as exciting as mainline Final Fantasy. That's just a product of being an MMO.
Yeah.
But God, does it do its best with it? Like, I think it holds it back a tiny bit, but it still does its best with it. Some people don't care at all. They like love that about it. I personally think some of the MMO stuff just holds it back a tiny bit in that it's just like it could be, I do without obviously filler side quests. I could do without, like long lines of exposition dialogue, but that's what you get in an MMO. Whether you like it or not, that's what you're gonna get in an MMO.
And that sense of community, the overarching expansive sense of community with like the fan festival that just recently happened, and
yes,
and all the patches and stuff, and being
14
able to,
is an amazing community. You gotta
so many different things.
It ain't no WoW. But
it's not WoW, where I've heard that WoW is not really as social of a game for an MMO. I could be wrong. I've never played World of Warcraft, so
my dream is for them to adapt 14's. They'll never do it, but adapt 14's story into a single player mainline Final Fantasy entry with the production value and everything of like a non-MMO. Like, they'll never do it, but like, God, like, it's so good that sometimes I'm like, this is too good to be an MMO. But but hey,
point
it's so good. Like, this is S tier people. So
yeah, Rain bring up a good point. But like FF14 being like this massive,
that's
like,
true,
appreciation love letter to all the other Final Fantasy games.
Yeah,
I talk to so many people who play 14 who have never played another Final Fantasy before it, and they say that stuff is good.
There you go. And that's like, part of the charm of 14 is it has that linchpin of like the weight holding it up of the Final Fantasy series. So it's like part of the charm is like, when am I going to get my Chocobo? Like, I got my Magitech, all these things you recognize that are like, it's a clash of everything great from other Final Fantasy games in a soup.
I just got my dancer up to level 70 through Heaven on High, like being able to talk about what the hell is Heaven on High and stuff like that. Like, that's so fun. I love the community building aspect that Final Fantasy 14 has potentially. It's so much fun. It's so great.
All right, there's 2 left.
2 of the most obvious ones.
So if I pick one, you know what my number 1 Final Fantasy game is. So is there a more exciting way to do this where I don't quite... I guess there isn't, is there?
No.
I guess there isn't.
Someone talking about Crazy Chocobo from Final Fantasy 13 2. Fantastic. Love that.
Took what used to take 55 hours to get into... Really? Really? That was recent. Okay. That's cool. The one thing I will say about 14... Don't level skip. Biggest mistake ever of my for me. You miss so much. Don't do it.
Skip the
don't level skip. Don't level skip. It might be appealing, but don't be an idiot like me. I made my bed and I will sleep in it, but oof.
It also costs a lot of money.
There's 2 left. There's 2 games left. One of them is a game that I utterly adore with all my heart despite any flaws, and the other one is a masterpiece.
So we know where this is going.
I know a lot of people probably have seen this coming. But my second favorite Final Fantasy, after playing them all, the mainline ones, is Final Fantasy VI.
Oh, all right. I was expecting kind of the heel face turn. All right. I was expecting the opposite, but hey, here we go.
Final Fantasy VI is a masterpiece. I need not say much else. Can you think of many flaws with Final Fantasy VI? I just want to tell anybody that. I mean, the game is utterly phenomenal in every single goddamn way.
What are some bad points about Final Fantasy VI?
I will say I don't like the part when your party gets split up.
I kind of
because I'm not a fan of that, but it only does it once.
I kind of like when you have to go around and like get everyone. I think there's a secret party member. I think that you can get. Who like speaks like very broken English or something like that.
Go.
And I think that was kind of weird. But other than that, I don't really have much problems with FF6.
That's true, Ensor. I think that was a problem with the time. Some of the characters are not as memorable as it. Like 6's cast is good, but it's still like a product of like the underwritten time of that era, kind of with RPGs. Thank you for the follow. Oh my god. But we have probably the second best villain in the whole series, maybe.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, we have one of the best soundtracks in the whole
Yep.
series. We have the ATB battle system, which everybody loves. I
Of
love
course.
the Esper system. There's so much firing on all cylinders with 6. And I would say 6 would rank high just based on that alone, because the first half is just this like incredibly good solid Final Fantasy game. And then that's the moment when it goes even further beyond that, and the World of Ruin blew my freaking balls off and blew me away, because at first I was enjoying 6, and then World of Ruin comes around and teaches me that it's one of the greatest video games ever made. Cause like,
Yeah, exactly. Talking about
'cause, like,
Umaro, of
I
course. How could I
knew
forget
a little
Umaro, the
bit.
best character in the game?
I knew a little bit going in. I knew that obviously like 6 has a different half, and that like Kefka wins.
Air quotes, kind of, sort of.
And I knew a little bit about that. What I didn't know is that 6, the World of Ruin, 6 is an open world, is a massive open world RPG on the Super Nintendo. Because
back in the day, yeah.
Because the World of Ruin is this amazing, utter masterpiece of you can literally almost go anywhere from the get-go. It did Breath of the Wild before Breath of the Wild on Super Nintendo. It's this
like,
amazing
20 years
sandbox
before it,
that
at least.
suddenly opens up. Again, works so structurally because it's utter chaos in the world now. And then all of a sudden, like, it's like a sandbox. You can go anywhere. Some people don't like it, but I thought it was absolutely incredible. Finding your party. You don't know what you're going to find next. Finding these upgrades here and there. Finding a boss battle here and there.
Kind of like an FF1 almost, where it's like it starts off like a little bit of guided, and then suddenly, boom, figure it out.
Yeah. It's there's not much to say because 6 is just so. It's the best Final Fantasy, probably. It probably is. It probably is. It has the best final boss. It has the best final boss in the entire series. Yeah, you can't beat Dancing Mad Kefka
as a
Tower
as a theme. Yeah, that's a pretty cool boss
it's
fight.
so good.
I'm partial to the Final Fantasy VIII final boss theme, but that's just me.
Oh, sure. No, I'm also talking aesthetically. Just like
aesthetically,
presentation.
And I'm looking forward to hopping back to Final Fantasy XIV because the next expansion, Endwalker, which is ending our first major story arc of Final Fantasy XIV, is coming up in November. I'm eager to see what that's going to be like and how incredible that's going to be.
I would make the argument Kefka does not win, despite the fact what people say, but that's a whole fun thing we could. You can suplex a fucking train.
You can suplex the train. Exactly.
The only thing is it does have a little bit of filler, I guess, but like, and it's piss easy. 6 is probably the second easiest Final Fantasy behind 15. 6 is incredibly easy, but like, who cares? It's so goddamn good.
It's got a good narrative, a great setting, awesome character.
It's got a cringy love story. I kind of find the Locke and Celeste love story really bad, but like, it's not a big part of it. It has 2 main characters.
The opera scene is
amazing. It's 6 is it kind of deserves to be called what it is, which is it's one of the best games ever made. It's absolutely amazing. It's got this beautiful theme of like nihilism and like hope, like striving against all odds, like and maintaining hope even in your darkest. Like, it's not the deepest Final Fantasy, but it's so good. It's so good. Yeah. Can anyone? I don't think anyone would disagree. Like,
yeah.
I would call it maybe the best Final Fantasy, but it's not my favorite Final Fantasy. My favorite Final Fantasy, after playing them all, is Final Fantasy X.
Who would have thought about this? Give it up for give it up for the obvious take. It's fine. Final Fantasy X is good. There's nothing wrong with this being at the top of the list.
Yeah. Now, how does everyone feel about that? Because I feel like 10 is not everyone's favorite.
All I gotta say is like this tier list makes me want to go through the whole series again and make my own tier
Yay!
list
Yay!
because that's just something that people should do.
I
You
think
know,
10
every so often.
I think 10 is absolutely phenomenal. I
10 is a
fucking love
complete
Final Fantasy 10.
too.
It doesn't get enough credit, probably for reasons I'll get into, but like 10
Everyone
has,
talks
in my
about 10
opinion,
too now.
the best story in the entire series. It is the only one to probably eclipse Shadowbringers for me personally. I think the story of Yuna's pilgrimage is so beautifully told. It's so well paced. Every story beat leads you into the next one so well. The world building is incredible in 10. Spira just feels like a world that you understand like what's going on immediately. You get a sense of like what this world is dealing with. The entire concept of sin and like a world that like can't get comfortable for too long because this thing is going to come around and reset everybody every like fucking 10 years is such an awesome idea. And everything is so sound and like and coherent and well realized. It's about breaking the cycle. It's about doing the impossible. And it's the best love story ever told in the entire series. I could gush about 10 endlessly. Does it have problems? Yes, I'll get into that. But like, for me, for someone who really values writing, I just think 10 is so beautifully written. Tidus is this perfect... He himself may not be super likable, but he's like this perfect, like, you get the world through his eyes kind of thing, and you understand everything because of it. And there's just like things are always happening in 10. It is always like it's always building. The idea of like a pilgrimage where Yuna has to constantly like lead herself like to bit after bit in like in toward the end goal. You always get a sense of like as you're going, it ramps up and up and up and up. Like you know, like you know where it's heading. I think the twist with Yuna is beautifully telegraphed and so beautifully tragic. I'll get to my favorite thing about 10, but like I love Jecht. I love Jecht as a villain. Like I think he's such a great antagonist because he's not just this physical force against Tidus, he's a spiritual one. And everyone's just doing the ha ha ha, which is exactly what happens when you bring up 10. Is all people do is laugh and ha ha ha. But I'm gonna tell y'all right now.
Terrible.
The laughing scene of 10 is actually amazing. It's
a
only
good
bogged
scene.
down. It's only bogged down by bad voice acting. Bad voice acting, I'm gonna say right now, which was just a product of its time, is concealing the greatest Final Fantasy game. I'm gonna tell y'all, if it didn't have that holding it back, there is such an incredibly beautiful, well-told, simple, wonderful story in 10. And then the gameplay. I think the conditional based battle system is the best turn-based in the whole game. It's like it's wonderfully strategic in a subtle way. Knowing what your party is gonna do, like knowing who's gonna go next, you plan for each like attack. It's great being able to swap in other party members. An actual Final Fantasy game where every party member kind of gets something to do, not just in the gameplay, but in the story. Everybody has a moment to shine in 10. Everybody does something. They all have like, some of them have arcs. Auron is one of the best characters in the whole series to me. Yuna is one of the best characters in the whole series for me. 10 has 2 main characters. I could gush on and on about 10. Like, forever. I love 10. I love it so much. I just think it's so well realized, and it just is what it is, and it does it like beautifully. I don't think it gets enough credit.
The combat's really cool. It's like turn-based. You can see like a queue of like, okay, these people are specifically going next. It has a really interesting love story between Wakka and Lulu, of course, obviously.
Yuna and Tidus's relationship, it took me so long to realize, and I had some help from my friends who helped me realize it too. Like, it's really beautiful. It's the best love story in the series. There's a genuine reason for these two to fall in love, and there's a tragedy behind it. Like, there's a tragic nature to it. The sending scene. I love 10 so much. I love it. It has problems. Don't get me wrong. The voice
yeah.
acting 100%. The localization and scripting, sure. Most of that's a product of its time, but if you strip away that, and in my opinion, the bad side quests, I think you have the best Final Fantasy experience personally to me. I
Yeah.
and for me, the best ending in the entire series. I
Mm.
love the ending of 10 so much. I mentioned before, everyone, that I love endings with sacrifice, where it's a happy ending, but it comes at the cost of sacrifice. And I just love how the whole story, it's Yuna that's kind of going to be the one who's doomed, but they pull the swerve at the end, and it's Tidus who has to say goodbye. And
Mm-hmm.
it's in that beautiful, beautiful goodbye. Yuna has to say goodbye to her love, but she's now stronger than ever because of it. The world is better than ever because of it. I love 10 so much. I think the sphere grid is a really neat idea. Not always super sound, but a super neat idea. I don't think 10 gets enough credit. I really don't. It's the one I'm most passionate about. It's the one I will jump to its defense the quickest, because I think it gets so much shit for reasons that either are just because of what it was at the time, or reasons that maybe people don't fully understand. The laughing scene is actually a really beautiful scene.
It's a great scene by design.
It's a scene about two people, their last moment of levity in their life as far as they know. It's a scene of like people who are forcing happiness, trying to be happy in a dark time because they know, Yuna knows she's going to her death. It's so good. Orin is such a tremendous character. Lulu is such a tremendous character. Kimari has a little arc. Waka sucks, but at least he has an arc. Riku's fine. Tidus has an arc. You got to give him that. I love Jax. He's my favorite antagonist in the series. Seymour, is a little under.
He's got an arc.
But like the story just builds and builds in 10 in such a way that it just works, in my opinion. The pacing is so good. Like you're always being led into. Does that make sense? You're always being led into the next story bit beautifully. There's very little filler. You're focused. They're focused on their goal. It's a story about Yuna, her pilgrimage. There's a tragedy behind it. They have to stop it. There's some twists along the way. There's some character development along the way. It's flawed, but it's one of my favorite games of all time. I fucking love Final Fantasy X, and it's my favorite Final Fantasy game. Thank you very much.
And that was Chrono KD's TED Talk, everybody. How did you like that?
Swap all the characters out in battles and how they make it like it's cool actually making you use the other characters. Like,
it's much fun.
I hope maybe for 10 haters, I kind of brought in a little bit of why I love it so much. Yeah. You know why you're doing it, which is yes. It's not
100%.
It's not
still mad
8 where you wonder why the hell things are even happening the way they're happening, or why the characters are even doing it half the time. 10 is just, you know where they're going, you know why they're doing it. You know why they're hiding secrets. It's not the deepest one, but it
works.
Yeah, it's just such a great, wonderful game. It's so good.
To quote a very famous game developer and game director, it just works.
Exactly. And Don, I didn't even realize that at first.
It just works.
Yeah, there's a lot of people. Yeah, I feel like 8's the placement people are most angry about, but for me, that's still high. I see that as a pretty good placement. But
I mean, 8 is pretty much directly in the middle of the road.
Live to be in a girly pop band in 10-2. That would make 10-2 the best in the series.
That would be incredible. I want to see that. Commission the voice actor.
This was fun. This was fun because like I don't even care about the list schmish, but we like talked about so many cool things and celebrated Final Fantasy. This was fun. Mostly just being playful. Yeah, that's true.
It was almost like doing a podcast. It's so
it was. God, this was even more fun than I expected it to be.
I love doing like the fun podcasting formula and stuff like that. I've always wanted to like start my own podcast. I've mentioned this a couple times before to people. So this to me is just like
I loved having you on too. I loved having you on. No,
Yeah,
I
so glad you invited me to this. I am super grateful. This has